Is that a museum piece? Gunnery Sergeant Thorne's laugh echoed across the Quantico range. All eyes fell on Kalen Vance, a technician in a green t-shirt, clutching an old M16. Thorne towered over her. This is a competition for warriors, sweetheart, not for tech support. Take that relic home. What he didn't know? The quiet woman they mocked was Spectre 1, the sole survivor of the legendary Ghost Squadron. Before you begin, subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories. The July air over Quantico, Virginia, was a thick, wet blanket. Heat shimmered in waves off the asphalt of the vast Marine Corps base, carrying the sharp scent of gunpowder and the low hum of military pride. Here, at the annual marksmanship competition, excellence was not just expected. It was the currency of respect. The air crackled with the competitive energy of the nation's finest warriors. Amidst the sea of sculpted muscle, high and tight haircuts, and crisp Marpat uniforms, Kalen Vance was an anomaly. She stepped out of a dusty, faded blue Ford F-150 that looked like it had seen better decades, and the silence that fell over the nearby group of recon Marines was immediate and heavy with judgment. At 24, she possessed a striking classical beauty with fair, unblemished skin and intense, deep blue eyes. Her jet black hair was pulled back into a severe, functional bun, not a single strand out of place. She wore a simple olive drab t-shirt that fit her slender, athletic frame perfectly, tucked into matching cargo pants. She looked less like a competitor and more like a university student who had taken a very wrong turn. The object that drew the most scorn was the long, hard-gelled rifle case she pulled from the truck bed. It was old, its surface scratched and worn, a relic from a bygone era. "Well, look what the cat dragged in," a gravelly voice boomed, dripping with condescension. Kalen looked up. The speaker was Gunnery Sergeant Thorne, a man built like a brick wall with a jaw that looked like it could crack walnuts. At around 35, his face was a roadmap of sun and scowls, his presence radiating an aura of absolute, unshakable confidence. He was the alpha of his pack, and his team of elite recon Marines, all armed with the latest M27 IARs, fanned out behind him like a loyal wolf pack. Thorne gestured toward her rifle case with a flick of his chin. "Welcome to the big leagues, sweetheart. Pretty sure the technical support tent is over there. Did your GPS get you lost?" Kalen walked toward the registration table, her movements fluid and economical. "I'm here to compete," she stated, her voice even and devoid of emotion. A ripple of laughter went through Thorne's men. He stepped in front of her, blocking her path. He was a full head taller, his shadow engulfing her. "Compete? With what exactly?" He pointed a thick finger at the case. "Let me guess. Your daddy's old M16? I've got one just like it, collecting dust above my fireplace." The mockery was blunt, a tool to intimidate and belittle. They saw a pretty girl in over her head, an easy target. Kalen met his gaze without flinching. On the surface, she was a placid lake, but deep beneath, powerful currents of resolve swirled. She had faced down men who made Thorne look like a choir boy. Their words were just noise. As Kalen turned to finish her registration, a younger Marine stepped up to Thorne. This was Corporal Miller, a man in his early 20s whose build was leaner than the others. His eyes, sharp and intelligent, were constantly scanning his surroundings. As the team's designated tech specialist, Miller's world was one of data and diagnostics, not just brute force. "Gunny," Miller said, keeping his voice low, "I ran another diagnostic on the Aegis this morning. I'm picking up something weird." The Aegis sighting system was Thorne's pride and joy. It was a cutting-edge piece of technology, a smart scope that could calculate windage, drop, and lead in milliseconds. It was supposed to be flawless. "Weird how?" Thorne grunted, his attention still half on Kalen. "Microsecond energy spikes. They're unscheduled and untraceable," Miller explained, looking troubled. "They're too short to be standard interference. It's like a flicker of data being sent somewhere." Thorne scoffed, finally turning his full, dismissive attention to the younger man. "It's interference, Miller. We're on a base with more radio frequencies than a hornet's nest. The system is the pinnacle of military tech. It's perfect." He slapped the side of his own rifle, where the sleek Aegis scope was mounted. This is what wins competitions, not some relic from a museum. Kaylin's back was to them, but her hearing was preternaturally sharp. At the mention of unscheduled energy spikes, a cold, familiar stillness settled over her. It was the signal, the exact digital fingerprint she had been hunting for 5 long years. The name echoed in her mind, a ghost of a name that fueled her entire existence. Arthur Finch. She knew then that he was watching. Finch, the brilliant treasonous project director for the Aegis system, had built a backdoor into its core programming. A backdoor that, 5 years ago, in a desolate Afghan valley, had broadcast her team's position to the enemy, turning a covert mission into a slaughterhouse. Now, her presence here, a ghost from his past, must have spooked him. The spikes Miller detected were a sign of his panic, a sign he was checking his hidden creation. Her face remained a mask of calm indifference as the clerk handed back her credentials. The Marine's laughter had faded into the background. They thought this was a competition of marksmanship. They were wrong. This was a hunt, and Kaylin Vance had just confirmed her prey was in the trap. The ripple of shock from Kaylin's perfect first round had not subsided. It had morphed into a low, persistent buzz of disbelief that followed her as she walked to the staging area for the second phase. Rapid-fire engagement. Gunnery Sergeant Thorne watched her every move, his arms crossed so tightly over his chest that the muscles in his forearms bulged. To him, her initial success wasn't skill, it was an anomaly, a fluke that had to be corrected. Luck, he reasoned, runs out. "All right, Diaz, you're up," Thorne barked. "Show this amateur how real Marines shoot." Sergeant Marcus Diaz was Thorne's second in command, a wiry, sharp-featured man whose calm demeanor was a stark contrast to his superior's bluster. He was a pure professional, a marksman whose movements were as precise as a surgeon's. He nodded once, his expression confident as he stepped into the shooting lane. His M27 was his partner, and the Aegis system was its brain. He trusted it implicitly. As the targets began to pop up at varying distances, Diaz raised his rifle. Through the Aegis scope, the world became a stream of data. The system highlighted targets in red, providing perfect lead and holdover calculations. He fired a controlled 3-shot burst. Nothing. The bullets impacted harmlessly in the dirt berm 3 feet to the left of the first target. Confusion flickered across his face. He recentered, fired again. More dirt. A cold knot of panic began to form in his stomach. The flawless system was actively lying to him. Thorne's face darkened from a scowl to a thundercloud. "What the hell are you doing, Diaz?" he hissed over the comms. "It's the scope, Gunny! The data is wrong," Diaz protested, his professionalism cracking under the pressure of public failure. From her position, Kaylin watched, her expression unreadable, but inwardly, a cold satisfaction settled over her. He's panicking. Arthur Finch, sitting in some secure office miles away, was trying to sabotage the demonstration. He was creating a glitch so spectacular that the Aegis units would be recalled for diagnostics, giving him the perfect opportunity to erase the back door. As Diaz floundered, Kaylin discreetly pressed a button on a small device concealed in her pocket. It was a high-speed data logger, and it was now capturing every corrupted packet of information Finch was sending. The trap was closing. Finally, Diaz's time ran out. Humiliated, he cleared his weapon and stalked off the line. Now it was Kaylin's turn. She stepped into the lane, the old M16A2 feeling like an extension of her own arm. When the buzzer sounded, she became a blur of focused motion. There was no hesitation. Her eyes scanned the field, her brain processing target acquisition, distance, and movement faster than any computer. Pop up at 100 meters. Bang. Pop up at 300, moving. Bang. 2 simultaneously at 200. Bang. Bang. It wasn't just shooting, it was a symphony of controlled violence. Her magazine change was so fast it was barely perceptible. In under 30 seconds, every target was down. A perfect score. The stunned silence that followed was heavier than before. Her performance, immediately following the catastrophic failure of the vaunted Aegis system, was an indictment. It made Thorne and his cutting-edge technology look foolish. and for a man whose entire identity was built on superiority, it was an unforgivable insult. His rage finally boiled over. He stormed across the firing line, his face purple with fury. "That's impossible!" he roared, his voice cracking. "You did something to my team's gear. You cheated." He closed the distance between them in 3 long strides, his massive frame towering over her. Kaylin stood her ground, her rifle held loosely at her side. "I don't cheat, Sergeant," she said, her voice a dangerous whisper. "Liar!" he bellowed, his discipline completely gone. "You have some kind of jammer, some device. I'm going to find it." Before she could react, he lunged, his big hands grabbing the front of her olive-drab t-shirt. He intended to rip it open, to expose whatever piece of electronics he imagined she was hiding underneath. Kaylin tensed, her combat instinct screaming, but it was too late. "Reap!" The sound of tearing fabric cut through the air. The front of her shirt was ripped open from the collar down, exposing the pale, smooth skin of her chest and sternum. Thorne froze, his hand still clutching the torn cloth, his furious expression melting into slack-jawed confusion. There was no device. There was only ink and scarred skin. Sprawled across her chest was a magnificent, terrifying tattoo. A massive eagle, wings spread wide as if in a dive, its talons gripping a sniper rifle. Each feather was rendered in the painstaking detail, and below it, in stark military block letters, were 2 lines of text that struck the heart of every seasoned warrior on that range like a bolt of lightning. Ghost Squadron, Nunquam Oblitus. The name on Kaylin's chest hung in the air, a phantom that silenced 100 hardened Marines. Ghost Squadron. It wasn't an official unit designation. It was a whisper, a legend spoken of in hushed tones in classified briefing rooms and late-night barracks sessions. A deniable asset. A team that took on missions that officially never happened. And they had all supposedly been wiped out years ago. Thorne dropped the torn pieces of Kaylin's shirt as if they were burning embers. The blood drained from his face, leaving behind a pasty mask of dawning horror. "Cease fire! Cease all activity on this range." The voice that boomed over the PA system was like the crack of doom. It belonged to Colonel Hayes, the base commander. He was a man in his late 50s, tall and wiry, with a face carved from granite and eyes that had seen more than most could imagine. He moved with an urgent ground-eating stride, descending from the observation tower, his boots crunching on the gravel as the crowd parted before him like the Red Sea. He stopped directly in front of Kaylin, ignoring Thorne completely. His gaze was fixed on the tattoo, his expression a mixture of profound sorrow and deep respect. "Captain Vance," he said, his voice low and raspy, using her former rank. "The official report listed you as KIA, died of wounds in Landstuhl." "Some parts of me did, Colonel," Kaylin replied quietly, pulling the tattered remnants of her shirt together. "The rest was assigned to a new mission." Hayes turned to face the stunned assembly, his eyes locking onto Thorne, who looked as if he was about to be physically sick. 5 years ago, the colonel's voice was now a cold, hard instrument of command. A recon Marine unit was scheduled for a high-risk infiltration mission in the Kunar province, Operation Sundown. At the last minute, their mission was scrubbed. Another unit volunteered to take their place. He let the words hang in the hot, still air. That unit was a 6-person JSOC team, codenamed Ghost Squadron. They walked into a sophisticated ambush. The intel was bad. The enemy knew their every move. They were outnumbered 10-1. A muscle twitched in Hayes' jaw. Their commander, callsign Spectre 1, fought alone for 17 hours after the rest of her team was down. She not only survived, she brought all 5 of her fallen brothers home. The recon unit whose lives were spared that day was the 3rd Force Recon, the direct predecessor to your current unit, Gunnery Sergeant. The final piece of information landed like a physical blow. Thorne staggered back a step, his legs giving out from under him. He dropped to his knees on the hot gravel, the bravado and arrogance stripped away, leaving only a raw, gaping wound of shame. He hadn't just insulted a competitor, he had desecrated the memory of the very heroes who had died so his unit could live. Later, in the sterile quiet of the colonel's office, the final pieces of the puzzle fell into place. Kaylin placed her small data logger on his polished mahogany desk. "Arthur Finch sold the backdoor code," she said, her voice flat, clinical. "The same vulnerability that compromised us 5 years ago is in every Aegis system today. He thought I was dead, that the last person who knew the truth was gone. My presence here, performing at a level that defied logic for a civilian, it panicked him. He tried to remotely sabotage the system to create a cover story for a recall." She tapped the device. "And in doing so, he authenticated his remote access on a secure military network. The signal is being traced as we speak." Colonel Hayes looked at the small device as if it were a venomous snake. His face was grim. He picked up the secure line on his desk and punched in a single number. "Execute," he said, his voice like ice. Miles away, in a gleaming high-rise office in Reston, a team of plain-clothed NCIS agents burst through the door of a lavish corner office. Arthur Finch, a portly man in an expensive suit, looked up from his computer, his face a mask of arrogant surprise that quickly curdled into pure terror as the agents swarmed him. The trap had sprung. The trial of Arthur Finch was swift and shielded from the public eye. The evidence Kaylin had secured was irrefutable. The evening news carried only a single, sterile line: "Defense executive convicted under the Espionage Act." But for those who knew the truth, justice had a name and a face. Finch was found guilty of treason, espionage, and providing material support for terrorism. The sentence was absolute: life in prison without the possibility of parole, to be served at the Supermax facility in Florence, Colorado, where he would never see the light of day as a free man again. His network was dismantled, its tendrils severed. A few weeks later, in a quiet, solemn ceremony at Arlington National Cemetery, 6 names were read aloud. The President of the United States presented 6 posthumous medals of honor. Kaylin Vance, standing tall and straight in her immaculate Marine Corps captain's dress blues, accepted each one on behalf of the men she called brothers. The weight of the gold stars on their blue ribbons felt heavier than any burden she had ever carried. The ghosts were finally at peace, their honor restored. Back on the day of the competition, after Finch's arrest, Colonel Hayes had moved to officially cancel the final round, but Kaylin had stopped him. "Let me finish it, sir," she had said, "for them." So, she had stepped into the lane for the final impossible challenge, the drone engagement. The crowd watched in reverent silence. This was no longer a competition. It was a eulogy written in gunpowder and steel. As the 5 drones launched into their chaotic dance, Kaylin raised her father's rifle one last time. The first drone jinked left. Bang! That was for Jake Riptide Reynolds, her point man. The second climbed high. Bang! For Sam Doc Chen, her medic. The third dove low. Bang! For Will Ghost Peterson, her sniper. The fourth and fifth crossed paths in a dizzying display. Bang, bang. For an expert, this was a difficult shot. For Kaylin, it was a salute to her 2 breachers, brothers who had always worked in tandem. The drones fell from the sky like broken birds. She didn't wait for the scores. She cleared her weapon, packed it carefully into its case, and walked away. Gunny Thorne was waiting for her by her truck. He looked smaller, diminished. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a profound, soul-deep shame. "I can't fix what I did," he said, his voice raw. He couldn't meet her eyes. "There are no words, but I swear on the honor of my corps, this lesson will not be wasted. My team, I will be better. We will learn what it means to be a Marine again, from the ground up. We will learn respect." Kaylin paused, her hand on the truck door. She looked at him, and for the first time saw not an antagonist, but just a man who had lost his way. "See that you do, Sergeant," she said. "Then their sacrifice won't have been in vain." She never went back to the defense contractor. Instead, she accepted an offer from the Pentagon. The final scene unfolded months later, under a clear autumn sky at a different Quantico range. Kaylin stood watching a group of young Marines, including a focused Corporal Miller. She wore a simple polo shirt, with a small Marine Corps Systems Command logo embroidered on it. Her black hair was still in its neat bun. "Technology can fail you," she said, her voice carrying a quiet authority that commanded more attention than Thorne's ever had. "It can be compromised. It can be broken. But your training, your instincts, your unbreakable will, that is what will bring you home. She watched them, a mentor, a guardian. A faint, genuine smile touched her lips as she looked out at the new generation. The weight had been lifted, justice had been served. Inspector One, the ghost warrior, had finally found her new dawn. Kaylin's story teaches us that sometimes the greatest miracles don't come from a sudden flash of light from the heavens. Sometimes God's work is seen in the unbreakable will He places in a broken person's heart. It's the quiet strength that allows someone to stand up one more time after being knocked down again and again. In our own daily lives, we may not face down traitors on a shooting range, but we all face our own battles. We feel underestimated, overlooked, or burdened by the scars of our past. Kaylin's journey is a powerful reminder that even when you feel broken, you still have a purpose. The miracle is finding the courage to endure, trusting that justice and peace can be found even after the longest and darkest storms. If this story of resilience and honor resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need a reminder that their strength is greater than their struggle. Let us know in the comments what part of Kaylin's journey moved you the most. And be sure to subscribe to the channel for more stories that inspire and uplift. May God bless each and every one of you watching. May He grant you strength in your trials, clarity in your purpose, and peace in your heart.